I mean, my experience, like doing documentaries from like, I've been doing documentaries from so many different places in the world, like from Ukraine, from Syria, the Amazon jungle, all these different places that very few people get to visit because, like, it's a war zone or it's a environment that no one, like, very few people actually gets to visit. And I always find it really interesting to when I usually am a part of the process quite early. I like to be part of the process already when a director is shooting the film, so that I can start researching of like, okay, so how does these places sound? Get hold of different local recordings, ambiences, background sounds from these different areas in the world. Maybe even listen to local music to get the feeling of, okay, so what is the feeling of this place? And then I spent so much time on like creating this whole sonic environment that's surrounding you. For example, in the cave, which is about this underground hospital in Syria, where they hide underground because the fighter planes, like, they just bomb everything on the ground, so they hide below ground, and then they all the time they listen. They really listen to like what's going on up there because they can't see it. So it's really about listening. And for a film like that, they shot so much of the film with cameras quite far away from the characters, but zoomed in because they couldn't get close to the characters all the time because it was such a tough environment to be shooting in. I mean, there were 3 photographers, but actually in the beginning there was a 4th one who actually, I mean, he got very wounded during the shoot and like had to leave and so on. I mean, shooting these movies are very, very, can be very dangerous and it's very difficult circumstances. So, for example, on The Cave, because so much of it was like you were zooming in to get close-ups of people, but there was often no radio mic on the characters. There was only a mic on the camera, so you could kind of hear what was being said, but really not much else. Then you could hear a little bit of like the noise that was going on, so we could kind of get a picture of like, okay, so these are the kind of sounds that is part of this environment, but we had to build up everything. And for all the movements of the characters, everything was Foley, because it was so impossible to get close to the characters with the microphones. So Lars Ginsel, who mixed that film but also cut the dialogue in the film, he spent so long time just cleaning up all the dialogue, and the only thing that was left then was dialogue. Heikki Kossi, who did the Foley, he did layers and layers of like footsteps and movement and props and everything to make it feel real. And then like all these environments as well that I built, with all these different sounds and recordings and different things. And then after the premiere, one of the nurses who like got out alive, and she watched the film and she was like, this is exactly how it feels to be in that hospital. This is exactly, I mean, watching this movie made me feel exactly how I felt when I was there. I mean, almost everything was built up the way that almost you would, I mean, like just layers and layers and layers of Foley to make all the people feel real. And it really paid off, and it made even people who were part of this experience of being in the cave, they felt like, okay, this is like being there. And without the Foley, it would have. I mean, it would never have been like that. I mean, you wouldn't feel the presence of the people.
How was the process? That's interesting.
As far as I remember, it was like at least a week and a half, maybe even almost 2 weeks of Foley, which is a lot of Foley for a documentary. I mean, what I usually get allocated budget-wise for a documentary is usually a couple of days of Foley. And that means that I spot everything that I want, so that I just send a track with, or maybe 2 or 3 tracks with this very specific things that I'm looking for. But on something like The Cave, and also actually on The Territory, there were several passes on the Foley, and it just took a lot of work. Films like that can only be done when the producer is someone like National Geographic, who put in a lot of money for sound, actually. And that's, for me, doing those films was... for me, like, really so great to feel that a producer were actually interested in spending money on sound. For The Territory, we actually did 2 mixes. We did one mix for Sundance, and then we did another mix for the film at Skywalker Sound, which was for the American cinema release. For that film, we had the chance to go back and develop things even more, record more Foley, record more sounds and spend more time on the mix. So I feel that also, like, for documentaries in the US, that some of the big production companies are actually also aware of the great effect that sound can have on the film and that Foley can have on the film. They know that it's really important for the impact of a documentary, that sound is such a big part of the storytelling.
So I understand that you did the first mix and then you went back to sound work for the second mix. So it was not just a remix.
Yeah, it's this amazing feeling where you feel like the director gets more and more interested and curious about the sound, because regarding The Territory, the director Alex Pritz, he was just really aware of, like, became more and more aware of what sound could do, and it was actually quite a journey. He was one of the photographers on the film, so like he was thinking visually. I mean, he had a really strong vision for the film visually, but sonically he was from the start not that knowledgeable about what sound could do, but he was incredibly kind of interested and curious and really wanted to explore what sound could do. So, I mean, already the first pass of the film, which the film actually won a Craft Award at Sundance for the work, and they highlighted the sound design. And then even though that happened, then we decided, okay, we can do this even better. So let's do a second pass on the sound. And that was just, for me, such an amazing journey with the film. And I feel that so many documentary directors that I work with, you can really tell how they become more and more aware of sound. And I think that's also an important thing for us to remember as sound people, that one thing is that we do something special for the film, but it's also really important to inspire the director to then start thinking about, okay, what sound can do. And like at the end of the mix on The Territory, for example, like Alex was like, okay, should we hear that Foley a bit louder, because it's really giving you an impact of, like, okay, the footsteps down the hall, and you can just feel the presence of that, and that's really powerful in itself. Things like that suddenly, because the director gets inspired by the material that you bring to the table, then that also opens up for more opportunities. And I think as sound people, like, I think it's really important that we inspire each other. And that's also for me when working with other people, also on the sound team, this thing about like inspiring each other and kind of getting ideas and is such a big part of it. And I love when I hear Foley sound and I suddenly realize, okay, I can actually just play that on its own and almost take away the ambience totally, and then it feels like you're really there. And that might not have been something that I was thinking would happen when I just spotted that place for Foley, but when I hear the Foley and it has this special quality, and you can tell that there's a Foley artist who's been thinking about the precise story of the sound that you're recording, then suddenly that inspires me as a mixer and a sound designer to use sound in different ways. And that's also just to say that one of the things that I really look for in a Foley artist is also the creativity and making sure that every sound counts. If you want to put in footsteps, then those footsteps have to tell the right story. And if they tell the right story, then maybe suddenly that's the sound you're looking for. That's the key sound in the scene, and you can turn away other things. So it's really important that as a Foley artist and also as a sound designer, that you think about the stories you tell with each and every sound you make. I think that for these things, it's another good reason why it's important to be part of the process early. So on both The Territory and The Cave, we did sounds for those films before they locked picture. So during the picture editing, we would do sounds for some specific sequences. And we also did Foley for some of those sequences. So that it was an early way of kind of saying, this is what sound can do to this film, and can change it in a way where you might want to actually edit it a little different than you would have thought without the sound. So this is a way of kind of showing not just the director, but also the producers of what sound can do in a film. Sometimes that can be hard because of budget restrictions. Generally, for standard budget documentaries, I usually ask for a week of sound editing per 15 minutes of film, and then a week of mixing on top of that, and then usually 2 days of Foley. So there's many ways of budgeting things, but for me, the way to approach this is really to be part of the process early, and the earlier you're there, the better it is. I mean, it is the same for feature films. I feel that sometimes in the documentary world, then sometimes people can get maybe a little surprised that it's a good thing to be part of the process early, but as soon as you start developing things, I remember for The Territory, we did sound for the opening of the film, and then for the sequence in the middle where there's a big fire, forest fire, which, I mean, it's like 3 minutes of the film without any dialogue. It's just sound, music, Foley, and images, and there's no dialogue, and it's so powerful. And that's something that everybody kind of believed in because of us doing a sketch very early that showed everybody that this can be done. You don't need people to say things. It's so much more powerful without any words. It's really like every project is something special, and I feel so incredibly privileged to work with so many filmmakers who are so much into sound and really wants to explore what you can do with sound. And then just, I mean, having all these inspiring people around me makes this way of jumping around from different projects so much easier, because I'm working with people who are so dedicated, and that goes all the way from the sound team to the director and so on. Like, and then also like actually having a team. I quite often worked with Heikki Kossi for like 8-9 years in a row, where like he did every project I was doing, and now he moved to Skywalker, and I'm working with other people. I'm working with you, Martin, and I'm working with other wonderful Foley artists. But this thing about like finding people where you feel like they understand your way of thinking is so important for me, because it also means that when I go from one project to another project, I don't need to explain to the people I work with every time that I want every sound to have a texture, and this should be something special, and this, it kind of comes naturally, and I feel that when you talk with each other about a project or give directions to what you're looking for, putting things into like a more emotional kind of, can you create something poetic right here or something? When you do things like that, then you inspire the other person to work that way. And I think that's also a big part of great teamwork on sound teams, is that just like you want the director to not just sit there and tell you, okay, there's a car driving by, there's a door closing, there's a scooter driving by. You don't need the director to say those things. And for me, it's the same thing with the sound team. You want to work with people where you don't need to explain the obvious things. You want to be inspiring each other with all the magical things that sound can do.
Peter, I'm happy that I could have you here and talk about your inspiration of sound and sound for documentaries and this special focus on Foley. Now we are gone. I'll write you a message. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.